what the law actually says. Here's what it says, the very first provision of the local redevelopment and housing law says. Sorry, excuse me. The legislature hereby finds, determines, and declares there exist, have existed, and persist in various communities of this state conditions of deterioration in housing, commercial, and industrial installations, public services and facilities, and other physical components and supports of community life, and improper or lack of proper development which result from forces which are amenable to correction and amelioration by concerted effort by responsible public bodies, and without this public effort are not likely to be corrected or ameliorated by private effort. You should all know that the library board and the township have worked for years to put together a plan to renovate the library. That plan is now on hold because the council majority has approved studying an office building in Executive Drive as a possible location for the library. Getting back to the redevelopment law. The redevelopment law mentions blight 2 times. In the definition of a redevelopment area or an area in need of redevelopment, it says, it means an area determined to be in need of redevelopment pursuant to sections 5 and 6 of P.L.1992 C79, blah, 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 or determined heretofore to be a blighted area. Blighted area is in quotation marks, pursuant to the public law from 1949. It refers to the original repeal of the act, which was actually called the blighted, had blighted in the title. Both determinations is made pursuant to the authority of Article 8, Section 3, Paragraph 1 of the state constitution, which is where it derives the power. And if you go to read the state constitution, it uses the word blight. So that's the first mention of blight in the law. The second law says, the second reference says, an area determined to be in need of redevelopment pursuant to this section shall be deemed to be a blighted area. Again, blighted area is in quotation marks for the purposes of Article 8, Section 3, Paragraph 1 of the Constitution. All right? So there should be no question in anyone's mind that if under this law, supposedly the planning board and the study author found that this is an area in need of redevelopment, they have to, by law, decide that it is a blighted area. Now, everybody who is familiar with the library, raise your hands. How many of you now? Leave your hands up if you think the area is blighted. Thank you.
Doesn't make any sense.
I know this is an unusual setting, but I would appreciate it if you didn't applaud and didn't boo, because it's going to be a long meeting. I just want to comment on some of the comments at public comment. I think Mr. Turney made a great observation that we need a cohesive plan that puts it all together so that it makes sense and so that you can understand what we're trying to do. If we're going to move that library, you're darn right, we need a plan for transportation. As Mr. Gallus pointed out, there is no transportation to this proposed area in Executive Drive. I want to second what Ms. Silvestri said, that the planner who was hired to write this redevelopment study, which is required under the law, is not here tonight to present on her study, to answer questions from the council, and to answer questions from you. I find it unconscionable that we are going to be asked to take a major step in what is going to impact a major institution in our township, and we can't even question the person that wrote it. Now, I went to the planning board, and I heard the testimony and the questioning of the planning board, and I can tell you that this study needs to be vetted with the author. When the author came up and was questioned on this by Mr. Malanga and others, she did not even know, she used this study from a federal organization of all of the libraries in the country. And she used it to demonstrate that our library was deficient in so many ways. Mr. Malanga asked her, what's the cohort? What's the cohort? What is the sample size of this that you're comparing this to? And she didn't know. There are other things that happened at the planning board meeting that need to be brought up here. The planning board, under the law, is supposed to make a recommendation. The council is supposed to not make a recommendation, make the decision about whether this is. And for the administration to expect us to just take her report without any sort of vetting, without any sort of questioning, without any chance for you guys to ask her questions, I find it unconscionable. This is now the second time that the council has been asked by the administration to consider a redevelopment study where the author of the study is not present. The first time that was done was for Executive Drive and Essex Street. Let me see another show of hands. How many people are familiar with Executive Drive and Essex Street? Now, how many people think that it's blighted? Thank you. But that's exactly what happened. Thank you. I saw the hand in the back. Somebody does think it's blighted. So thank you. But most of the people that raised their hands didn't. And again, we did not have an opportunity to question the plan author about his designation that it's blighted and an area in need of redevelopment. And I'm going to put up a motion from the floor later on when this comes up on the agenda, and I'm going to move that the council does not consider this, that it tables it or votes it down until we get the planner who can come and answer our questions about this plan. Ms. Johnson, thank you very much for coming. You hit the nail on the head about accessibility. I keep hearing it over and over again, and every one of you are right. Moving this to Executive Drive is going to present major problems for accessibility. And Ms. Morelli, the blame's on me. I know we've talked about this a couple of times, and I've been taken up with a lot of other things, but I promise that we will get this done and draft to the town legal department in time to be considered perhaps at the next council meeting. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. Councilman McCartney, did you want to rebut any comments?
My colleagues hadn't spoken
All right.
yet, but yes, I felt that everything you just said was very misleading. You're still talking about a blighted law that was amended. It was written in 1949, amended in 1992. Nothing in this area, in this study, talks about blight, and nothing talks about moving the library. This is all we are being asked to do is designate the site, and then we would create the plan.
Great. I'm happy to rebut that, Council President. If you let her rebut me, I'd love to be able to rebut her.
Be my guest.
I read from the redevelopment law. You all heard it. You can all go online and find it. That's exactly what it says.
And the planning board followed.
Please, could I have the floor? Thank you.
I thought we were here about the phone.
Please, could you let me speak?
Finish.
Thank you. And it's also important to understand in the context of what's going on, where this redevelopment study fits in. Again, as the speakers have spoken, and they were absolutely correct, if this is found to be an area in need of redevelopment, it will qualify for sale and development without competitive bidding. It also enables the potential for payments in lieu of taxes, which can be up to 30 years and basically takes away future tax revenue as an incentive to the developers to do the redevelopment. But what I told you about the law, it specifically says it has to be a blighted area. I challenge anybody in this room to find any New Jersey Supreme Court decision about the redevelopment law that does not absolutely specify that everything that qualifies has to be blighted. I've got 4 decisions on my laptop, if I could find them. In each one of them, they say multiple times that the property, because of the law, has to be blighted.
That's correct.
Thank you, Council President.
You're welcome. Councilwoman?
Uh,
Councilwoman,
No.
Councilwoman Castellino.
Okay. First, I'd like to hear from from the administration in regards to the Supreme Court ruling from our council.
Mr. Trank?
If you're referring to Mr. Malanga's lawsuit that's been pending, it was argued on August 22nd, 2018 before Judge Bartels. It's on reserve. It's not the Supreme Court, it's the trial court. And it's Mr. Malanga's challenge to the Essex Green Executive Drive area as an area in need of redevelopment. So that is pending. There's no restraining order, and the township is fully authorized to go forward with the redevelopment process. Mr. Malanga never sought nor obtained any kind of restraining order at all. So the township is